Good evening, good evening. Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Beauty in Us Radio right here on Awesome God Radio. I'm your host, Nelson E. Brown, and I want to thank you all for tuning in to another broadcast. Now, I know it's been a while since I've spoken with you guys. It's been about 2 weeks since our last show with Maryland State Delegate, and candidate for Maryland State Comptroller, Miss Brooke Learman. She was our last guest that we had on May 24th, a couple of weeks ago. But I was absent last week because I attended an ice cream social at Mount Royal Elementary and Middle School with a couple of candidates for the Baltimore City School Board, Miss Ashley Esposito and Miss Salima Jasani. They are going to be guests for next week's show to talk about their campaigns and their stories behind them. So they're going to speak to us about their campaigns and why they decided to run for the Baltimore City School Board of Commissioners as one of the board of commissioners. So they'll be here next week to talk about their campaigns, and they'll be present next week to speak about their stories and how that ties into the work they do as community organizers and as educators throughout the community. I also wanted to share with you all that I attended a commencement ceremony for my college, for one of my colleges, this past weekend. I'm very excited about that. I'm still in a very celebratory mood right now, and I'll be attending a second ceremony this fall from my second university. So I'll have the opportunity to walk across the stage for the second time in the same year. But now I have 2 degrees and a certificate, and I'm very happy about that. I had an opportunity to walk across the stage with hundreds and hundreds of students and faculty, and I've had the chance to, speak to faculty members and all of the professors who watched all of us earn our degrees and continue on our journey of success. So I'm very glad that I had the opportunity to again garner 2 degrees and a certificate in the midst of a pandemic and even in the midst of going through the season of so much loss and so much heartbreak and disappointment in various areas of my life. I call 2022 my bounce back year because I had an opportunity to again restore and recover from all of the losses from 2020 and even from last year. And I also started this week, I started my internship under Civic Works with the MedStar Health program. Their house call program has an internship for students that I started this week. So this is my new job. This is my new position that I'm very excited about. So again, uh, a lot of announcements, a lot of events that are going to be taking place. But in addition to next week, I also have 2 other shows booked for the month of June. So on June 21st, I'll have some of the gentlemen from Young Men Strong, LLC, who are going to appear as guests for my post Father's Day special, and Mr. Dave Briglio, who was a guest on my show last summer. They're all going to talk about their experience as dads. This will be the very first Father's Day special for the Beauty in Us Radio, right here on Awesome God Radio. And the following week, on the 28th of June, we are going to have Maryland State Delegate Miss Regina Boyce here to talk about her work as a community organizer and as a state delegate for the Maryland General Assembly. So I wanted to take a few minutes to share all of these announcements because a lot has happened within the past few weeks. A lot has happened within the past few days between my new job at MedStar and my education, wrapping up my academic career with both of my colleges, and even with attending the ice cream social last week with all of the young people and with all of the children with their program. We had a chance to talk about art education in the public school system for Baltimore City, which was a very important conversation. So again, tune in next week as we speak to Miss Salima Jasani and Miss Ashley Esposito to talk about their campaigns for the city school board. You'll learn a lot from them about their stories and why they decided to run, and you'll also learn a lot about them and the work they do for the community as educators and as community organizers. But without further ado, I want to introduce tonight's topic. Tonight's topic is about friendships. And I wanted to speak about this topic. I wanted to give everybody a chance to weigh in on the subject because I know that the topic of friendships, it has a different meaning for everyone. I know that, what it means to be a friend and what it means to have friends can have a different connotation to certain people. So I wanted to talk about that a little more in detail. And I wanted to share 7 devotionals that I've been reading uh, from PastorRick.com. So Pastor Rick Warren is a pastor of Saddleback Church in Southern California, and I've been listening to his daily devotionals, and I've been reading them, and I've also been watching his broadcasts on TBN, and I learn a lot from him throughout each and every one of the devotionals that I read and listen to. But I'm going to share 7 of them with you all because they all pertain to friendships. They all talk about what it looks like to have healthy relationships, what it looks like to be happy, what it looks like to trust God in all of your relationships, what it looks like. They talk about what it looks like to focus on the good times and the better things that God has in store, and how God can move certain people out of your life in order to make way and open doors for new relationships and new connections. So that's what we will be discussing tonight. But again, I wanted to get through all of those announcements just to share with you all what I've been up to, because I know I've been on a little bit of a hiatus for the past couple of weeks. I've been busy trying to get things together for the summer and for the remainder of the year. Can you guys believe it? We're already halfway through 2022. We're in the month of June, so we have 6 more months before the end of the year. And again, I've just been squaring things away. I've been taking advantage of a lot of opportunities to network and to share my story and to learn more about other community organizers, activists, authors, entrepreneurs, and other people, other individuals and groups who possess so many talents. So again, as we talk about friendships this evening, I want you all to weigh in on the subject, because I know that, again, friendships, what it means to be a friend and what it means to have friends, can have a different meaning to different people. So, without further ado, I want to talk about the first devotional that I read this month on June 1st, and it's called Focus on the Good Times by Pastor Rick Warren of Saddleback Church in Southern California. So, again, he used Philippians chapter 1, verse 5 as a reference for this devotional, and he mentioned that Paul wrote the book of Philippians to the church that he started in Philippi. I think that's how you pronounce it in the Bible, where a woman named Lydia opened up her home and, along with others, welcomed Paul to the city. And the Philippian church even helped fund Paul's missionary journeys. And in Philippians chapter 1, verse 5, Paul says, "I thank God for the help you gave me." And the thing is, Paul didn't have a good time in Philippi. In fact, it was one of the toughest churches to get started. And when Paul went to the city to start a church, he was beaten, whipped, humiliated, falsely arrested, and thrown into prison. And he even survived a major earthquake. And then he was asked by the city leaders to leave town. Yet Paul told the believers, "Every time I think of you, I give thanks to God, to my God." And that's in Philippians chapter 1, verse 3 in the New Living Translation. And sometimes people wonder when they read this text, what is Paul doing? They wonder what he's doing. And even though Philippi was not a happy place for Paul, and even though he endured a lot of persecution and suffering during his time there, he chooses not to dwell on painful memories, but instead he expresses gratitude for the good things that had been done for him and through him. And this goes to show us that, again, the longer we know people, the more likely we are to take that person for granted and to look for faults and to remember the bad things instead of the good things they've done. And some of the questions that he asks in this particular devotional could consist of, are you still clinging to painful memories of people in your life? Or maybe you've never let them off the hook, and so you can't enjoy those relationships because you're still holding on to the past. So with that being said, let's take a pause right there and think about it. So when we think about painful memories of people in our past, we think about people who may have hurt us, or people who may have harmed us or wronged us in some way or another. And sometimes we think about, as we talk about friendships, we can think about the fact that sometimes as friends, or when we have friends, we get into disagreements. We have a different outlook on situations of a particular issue, or even with what's transpiring, or even if we've been wronged by people that we consider friends, or people who we love and support. on a daily basis. Sometimes we have a tendency to cling to those painful memories of that person in our lives, and sometimes we stay stuck in those moments, and sometimes we harbor ill will or even resentment towards that individual because of what they've done, and we are so harsh with them, and we have such high expectations for people who haven't died on the cross for us, people who aren't our God. We have so many high expectations for people who we put our faith and our trust in. But again, sometimes we have a difficult time letting them off the hook, and that prevents us from enjoying our relationships with them because we continue to hold on to the past. We continue to harbor resentment. We continue to harbor bitterness. We continue to display that ill will towards that individual or to the people who've wronged us. And we can have such an unforgiving attitude towards situations if we feel as though we've been wronged or if things don't go our way, or sometimes we feel as though if we forgive someone or let them off the hook, then that means that they're winning, or that we are in some way or another, we're not, I guess, seeking vengeance, or we're not we're doing something wrong. But this devotional again encourages us to focus on the good times and the positive situations. So when we focus on the good times and when we focus about the positive aspects of friendships, and even when we do have issues with people that we consider friends, learning how to forgive that person and move forward is very important. But that's something that a lot of us struggle with. I can definitely say that I struggle with forgiveness. I've talked about forgiveness on my show, and I've spoken about it. I've written about it in my books. So I'm no stranger to someone who has an unforgiving attitude when they've been wronged. I'm no stranger to harboring resentment, and even bitterness towards people who've wronged me. I can definitely acknowledge that it's very difficult for me to forgive people who have wronged me. And I think that as we speak about this subject, we can we can definitely see that memories are a choice, and that if you want to hold on to painful memories, you can go right ahead, but you're never going to be happy or satisfied. And in this text, Paul had a lot of reasons to focus on painful memories in Philippi, the town that he was a missionary in, but he still chose to be grateful for the people in his life and God's work in and through them. And Pastor Rick Warren encourages us to look at Paul as that model for what it means to, again, be grateful for the relationships that we do have, the positive rapport that we do have, the positive relationships that we do have with people who care about us and who love us. He uses Paul's journey and his testimony as that model and that example for us. And he says that when we do the same, God blesses our relationships far beyond our expectations. All of us have expectations when we enter into a friendship with someone, or when we develop some type of friendship with someone. We have expectations. We have the expectation for them to support us the same way we want to be supported. Our expectations of our friends could include them showing up to our events, showing up to our family gatherings, and you even supporting us in very sentimental moments in our lives. Some sources say that friendships can have a major impact on your health and well-being, but it's not always easy to develop or maintain friendships. And it's important to understand social connection in your life and what you can do to develop and nurture lasting friendships. And some sources talk about the benefits of friendships, and they say that good friends are good for your health. Not a surprise, but friends can help you celebrate good times and provide support during bad times. And friends prevent isolation and loneliness and give you a chance to offer needed companionship too. But friends can also increase your sense of belonging and purpose. They can boost your happiness and reduce your stress. They can improve your self confidence and self worth. But the friendships can also help you cope with traumas such as divorce, serious illness, job loss, or the death of a loved one. And in terms of us talking about the benefits of friendship, sources also say that they encourage you to change or avoid unhealthy lifestyle habits. So, again, friends also play a significant role in promoting your overall health, like I mentioned before. Sometimes sources say that many adults find it hard to develop new friendships or keep up existing friendships, and friendships may take a backseat to other priorities such as work or caring for children or aging parents. You and your friends may have grown apart due to changes in your lives or interests, or maybe you've moved to a new community and haven't yet found a way to meet people. Developing and maintaining good friendships takes effort, and the enjoyment and comfort friendship can provide, however, makes the investment worthwhile. So I'm going to stop right there for a minute and just talk about that. I think that it's important for us to understand the meaning of friendship. Some of these articles from some of these sources that I've pulled speak about friendship, but I want to backtrack and speak a little bit about my experience, with friendships and with what it looks like for me in terms of how I develop relationships and even what my biggest flaw is. I was actually talking to my mom yesterday about this before I put together the show and before I started this broadcast for the evening. I spoke to her about my biggest flaw, and I speak about this flaw in my therapy sessions with my psychotherapist, and I speak to her about this biggest flaw that I have now. Perfectionism was one flaw that I had struggled with for years. Struggling with self acceptance, developing a healthier self image and self concept was very, very challenging for me because I had a hard time developing a healthy dose of confidence because I was so fixated on my body image and attributing all of my success and all of my energy and time into my work and into my academic career. But it got to the point where I was engaging in unhealthy behaviors in terms of using food as a source of comfort in order to cope with all of the negative feelings or emotions that came along with achieving the success or even being an overachiever in general and not being satisfied with my accomplishments. I've always been a go-getter. I've always been someone who was very ambitious. I've always been a person who was very ambitious and motivated. But again, I was the type of person that never really enjoyed the small blessings or the small achievements. I was always the type of person who looked for the next thing to do immediately after whatever I accomplished in that moment. But now in my therapy sessions, I'm learning how to destroy that perfectionism, and I'm learning how to, again, open up because I have a lot of associates. I have a lot of colleagues. I have a lot of people in my network that I do business with. I have a lot of people in my network who I speak to about opportunities, but I have a very small circle of friends, a very small circle of people that I deal with on a personal level. And that's simply because I have a huge issue with trust with many people, and that's because I've been so hurt by several people throughout the course of my life, growing up, and even in my young adult life. And it's gotten to the point where I keep a lot of people at a distance now, and I'm not trying to be standoffish or demonstrate any type of cold and callous attitude. But I think that I've programmed myself to believe that in order to avoid any pain or any heartache or disappointment, just distance yourself from people and you won't even be exposed to that. But after speaking to my mom about this yesterday, I was speaking to her about my therapy session in terms of recognizing what my biggest flaw is in terms of how I develop relationships and how I keep a lot of people from a distance purposefully because I am very apprehensive about feeling heartbroken by people who let me down, being very apprehensive about building new bonds on a personal level with people because of the hurt that I had experienced from people that I had trusted in the past. I've spoken to her about that, and I've spoken to my psychotherapist about that, and I'm gradually learning about how important it is to really, really open up and give people a chance to get to know you before you completely shut them out or shut down. And again, I have a lot of associates. I have a lot of colleagues. I have a lot of people I do business with. I have a lot of people in my network who I can call if I need help, with an opportunity or with anything that I'm working on my end that I need their knowledge and expertise for. So I have a lot of associates. I have a lot of people in my network that I can call for opportunities or when I'm mentoring people on a professional level and when I need their expertise. I have people in my network that I can call, whether it's in business, whether it's in visual art, whether it's in trade, a different type of trade, whether it's in writing, whether it's in law. I mean, I have a lot of people in my network that I could call on for advice and expertise, but that's from a professional standpoint. But on a personal note, again, my small circle of friends is the circle that I'm comfortable with because, again, I've been hurt so many times in the past by several people that I've been programmed to believe that keeping people from a distance is the best way to avoid heartbreak and to avoid disappointment and to avoid feeling foolish for trusting someone or believing in someone who lets me down. But in my therapy sessions, I'm learning how to allow myself to be loved. I'm learning how to allow myself to be loved. It's very, very difficult for me to allow myself to be loved in something new as it pertains to dealing with a new person or a new bond or a new friendship or a new relationship. It's very difficult for me to allow myself to feel loved. It's something that I want, but it's something that I'm fearful of. And it's something that I've struggled with for a very long time. Because again, I sabotage it, I don't give it an opportunity, and I cheat myself out of prosperous relationships and friendships with other people because of my own insecurities. And now, since I'm 23 years old, I'm learning that a lot of it stems from my childhood in terms of feeling hurt by people that I've trusted, adults that I've trusted. And to be quite honest, male role models, father figures that I trusted, who've let me down and who've broken my heart. I think that that's a part of the reason why it's very difficult for me to allow myself to feel loved and be loved by new people. But that's something that I'm working on every single day. I work hard on my character every single day, and every flaw that I have, I do my best to try to. I wouldn't necessarily say fix it, but change it for the better. But when we think about our next devotional, which is positive prayer and how it produces strong relationships, we can think about Philippians chapter 1, verses 9 through 11, which says that, and this is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, so that maybe you may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ to the glory and praise of God. So again, that's Philippians chapter 1, verses 9 through 11 in the New International Version. And it lets us know, and Pastor Rick Warren in this devotional lets us know that Paul didn't just pray for people in his life, he prayed for them with joy. And these are probably things in other people's lives that you'd like to change. There are probably things in other people's lives that you would like to change, and you don't want to change yourself, but you want to change them. And you always want to change other people, but you can't. And that's what this Bible verse is relaying to us, that you can, however, pray and let God do his work in other people. And positive praying is more effective than positive thinking. And all of the positive thinking in the world isn't going to change that spouse, that friend, that child, or that situation. But positive thinking can change you, but it won't change somebody else. But positive prayer can make a difference in you and in someone else. So I've learned, and I'm still learning, that prayer is the number one solution to dealing with people who are difficult. It's the number one solution to dealing with people who you don't understand, people who've wronged you, people who've let you down, people who've broken your heart, or people who've disappointed you, or who've displayed that pattern of breaking your heart, breaking promises, disappointing you. Someone who has developed that habit. It's best to just pray for them. And this devotional lets us know that positive prayer changes things, and it can change people. You're not in the position to control somebody else's response or reaction, but you are in the position to change your response and your reaction to that situation. You can't control what anybody else does or thinks, but you can control how you respond to it. You can control how you react to it. So that's what this text is telling us. And one of the quickest ways to change a bad relationship into a good one is to start praying for the other person. And it will change you, and it can change the other person too. Now, you can definitely, I think it's safe to say that people who are a part of the faith-based community and who are a part of the church community understand that, okay, when we start praying, it can change things, but we have to pray for ourselves and pray for others. We can't control others, but we can pray for others. And Paul even told us how to pray for others in this text. And he says that from these verses, you can learn to pray for people in your life in four ways. Excuse me. You can pray that they will grow in love. You can pray that they will make wise choices. You can pray that they will live with integrity. And you can pray that they will become like Jesus. And you can pray this for yourself and anyone else in your life. And then you can slowly watch how God turns around the relationship and that seemed hopeless, or the relationship that needed to be revived in some way or another. So these are just examples that I'm using in order to get my point across to you all. That again, we all have issues with people. It could be our family members, it could be our friendships, it could be other relationships, even in business, in the workplace. We all are responsible for what we do. We are all responsible for how we respond to situations. We are all responsible for whether or not we want to forgive that person and move forward, or harbor that ill will and stay stuck. We are all in control of that. No one else can control our feelings about what they've done to us unless we speak to them about it, and unless we forgive them and move forward. Because if we don't forgive them and move forward, the control, we give them that control, and we give them a reason to keep us in bondage. We give them that reason to keep us stuck. So you do not have time, and you do not have the energy to continue to allow people who have harmed you or who have wronged you to keep you stuck. And I'm learning that myself. I'm slowly learning how to forgive people who have wronged me, because I perceive myself as being a very genuine person, someone who treats everyone with respect, regardless of what the situation may be, regardless of what may have happened. I always do my best to treat people with respect, and I enter into every situation with a genuine heart and with a sincere purpose. And when that trust and when that bond is broken, or when I feel betrayed, or when I feel used, I feel foolish, and I feel very angry and frustrated in that moment. So that's why it's very difficult for me to forgive others with a snap of a finger. I think that, again, because my heart is very pure, and I enter into every situation and into every friendship or any type of relationship with a humble heart, with an open one, and with a humble attitude. Something falls through the cracks, something happens, and then I get stuck in that pattern of feeling foolish and frustrated and angry at that person or those people who've done that. But again, I've learned how to communicate that in a better way. and to not harbor that ill will or those ill intentions on my end. And we talk it over. Pastor Rick Warren encourages us to think of a strained relationship in our lives and how we can pray for the four things for that purpose, for that person that we discussed in today's devotional. So again, the four ways that we can pray for people in our lives and who we are having a very difficult relationship or hard time with in general. We can pray that they will grow in love. We can pray that they will make wise choices. We can pray that they will live in integrity, and we can pray that they will become like Jesus. So those are the four ways that we can learn how to pray for people who are difficult, people who we are in breakdown with, people who we don't have healthy relationships with. Those are the four ways that we can pray for them. And again, we can watch how God works in their lives from that point forward as we continue to pray. And we can even, again, change the way we view situations. We can change the way we respond and react to situations. And again, no one else has control over our thoughts or our actions except us. How we respond to each and every situation is on us. We're responsible for how we respond to a situation, no matter how ugly it is. We're responsible for our reactions. We're responsible for how we view things. And we also have to think about how positive prayer changes us and not just the people who we're praying for. And whenever you get the chance, I want you, whenever you guys have leisure time, I want you to take a moment and read Galatians chapter 5, verses 22 and 23. And we can learn more about this fruit of righteousness in our lives as we continue to follow this path, this faith-based path. As we continue to follow Jesus and as we continue to walk this walk, I want you guys to take a look at Galatians chapter 5, verses 22 and 23, so that we can learn more about the fruit of righteousness that we talked about in this text. And that'll probably be a sermon for not a sermon, a show for another time. But let's see. The third devotional was about how to be patient with people's progress. Now, I think that that's something that was never articulated to me in that fashion, but it's something that I really appreciated once I read this devotional. Philippians chapter 1, verse 6 says that I am certain that God, who began the good work within you, will continue his work until it is finally finished on the day when Christ Jesus returns. And it tells us is that the key to patience is love. But it also tells us is that God doesn't wait until we're mature for him to start loving us. And he doesn't wait for us to clean up or straighten up to think that we're good enough for his love. And we shouldn't do that with others either. And we have to love them unconditionally. And we have to be patient with their progress. The Apostle Paul in this text is a great example. And that's because Paul knew that God was doing a good long work in the lives of the people in the Philippian church. And he was patient with their progress. And we have to think about that in terms of why we think it's so important to our happiness. And if we insist on perfection in people, we are going to stay in a state of misery for the rest of our lives. And that we're always going to be in a state where we're expecting perfection out of people before we can even enjoy our relationships with them or even enjoy them as people. We're never going to be happy unless we accept people, flaws and all, and unless we love them unconditionally with their flaws, even with their strengths, weaknesses, shortcomings, and so forth, because we all have them. None of us are perfect. We all have flaws. We all have insecurities. We all have weaknesses. We have all wronged people, and that's something that I've realized in my therapy sessions too. When I think about how I've been wronged, and how the people who have wronged me are just as worthy as forgiveness as I am from the Heavenly Father. And again, like I said, we've all wronged people. We've all done things that we're not proud of. We've all may have said things in the past that we are not proud of. But again, just because someone has wronged us does not mean that they are any less deserving of forgiveness and for redemption. We are all worthy of forgiveness. We're all worthy of second chances, especially by God, even if we don't deserve them. We all deserve mercy and we all deserve compassion. So I think that mercy and compassion go hand in hand when we speak about people who've done wrong or when we speak about people who've wronged us. And even when we think about the way we've wronged others, we are all worthy of chances to improve, another chance to improve, another chance to make things better. We are all worthy of that forgiveness, because if none of us were worthy of the forgiveness that we ask for and that we may not deserve, he Jesus would not have died on the cross for our sins. And we have to be able to celebrate people, instead of judging them for their imperfections. And we have to be patient. And again, the key to patience is love. And in the next verse, Paul says that it is right that I should feel as I do about all of you, for you have a special place in my heart. And that was in Philippians chapter 1, verse 7 in the New Living Translation. And he says that in my heart, this is not the text, this is just in general. In my heart, this is the real key to happiness. And again, this is just summing up the verses in this chapter and in this book that we've read this evening. When you love and celebrate people and focus on their steps forward, you're going to build healthy, happy relationships. So again, we all have flaws. We all have shortcomings. We all have things that we've done that we're not proud of. We've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, and we all deserve mercy and compassion. And again, we can't think that we are worthy of forgiveness, but someone else isn't. We can't say that someone else is not worthy of forgiveness, because again, we are just as we deserve forgiveness, and I can't even get it out. So are the people who've wronged us. We're all worthy of forgiveness. We are all worthy of second chances. We all need mercy and compassion, because again, we've all fallen short of the glory of God. We can't expect perfection out of people that we meet. We can't expect perfection out of people who we love and care about. And we can't expect perfection out of people who've wronged us in the past. We have to give people an opportunity to share their stories and to, apologize and make amends. And again, everybody has made mistakes. We all make mistakes. We all fall short. But I think that compassion and mercy go hand in hand when we think about this and when we speak about people who've done wrong or who have been wronged. Compassion and mercy go hand in hand on both ends. Whether you are the victim of the offense or whether you are the person who acted as the offender, if that makes any sense to anybody. You don't need someone else's approval to be happy. That's something that I learned a long time ago. And in Philippians chapter 1, verse 18, it says that it does not matter. I am happy about it. So Christ is preached in every way possible, whether from wrong or right motives, and I will continue to be happy. And in a nutshell, this tells us that you can be happy in life if you don't let other people control your attitude. And in Philippians chapter 1, verses 15 through 17, Paul talks about different kinds of people who are affecting his ministry while he is a prisoner in Rome. And there are some whom he considers comrades and encourage him in his ministry, while others criticize, compete with him, and conspire against his ministry. And in Philippians chapter 1, verses 15 through 17, it states that some of them preach Christ because they are jealous and quarrelsome, but others from genuine goodwill. These do so from love because they know that God has given me the work of defending the gospel, and the others do not proclaim Christ sincerely, but from a spirit of selfish ambition. They think that they will make more trouble for me while I'm in prison. And This lets us know that few things rob our happiness faster than being criticized or feeling like others are working against us. And that's simply because we all want to be loved and we all want approval and we all want people to like us in some regard. But yet, even with negativity toward his ministry, Paul says that he didn't need anybody else's approval in order to to follow his dream and pursue his ministry. Just like we don't need other people's approval in order to be happy. And you're as happy as you choose to be. I think that that's the number one message from this devotional. You don't need other people's approval to be happy, and that you're as happy as you choose to be. And if others are unhappy with you, that's their choice. And if you haven't earned someone's approval by now, you're probably not going to get it. And you're probably going to be miserable if you try to live for the approval of everybody else. I think about all of the people who make moves, who make decisions, and who live their lives according to what they think people think. And it really, really drives me nuts because I think about all of the people who have shallow attitudes about materialistic things, about um, just their whole aspect of how they live their lives, their lifestyles, the cars they drive, the homes they live in, um, just from top to bottom, just their attitudes about all of it. I think about how shallow people can be sometimes when they focus on aspects of life that are not important, like the fancy cars, the homes, and um, everything of that nature, instead of focusing on what's really important, like their education or how they can, build their character, or how they can, again, tighten up loose ends with their weaknesses, how they can work with their friends, their spouses, in order to fix problems within the community or help give someone else a helping hand who may be struggling. These are just examples of things that people can do in order to think about how valuable life is and how valuable happiness and contentment can be. And Paul later explains in verses 29 and 30 why you can be happy no matter what. He says that, for you have been given not only the privilege of trusting in Christ, but also the privilege of suffering for him. We are in this struggle together, and you have seen my struggle in the past, and you know that I'm still in the midst of it. And Paul says it is a privilege to suffer when you're doing the right thing, because that's when you're most like Jesus. Excuse me. And he encourages us to remember that we don't let what other people say or do control our happiness, and that our joy comes from God. So again, we have a choice in terms of whether or not we want to be happy. We cannot allow other people to control us in terms of how we think and whether or not we're going to be happy one day or sad another day. I mean, we all have moments where we are down, and we all have moments where when we're sad, and we all have periods where we may feel a sense of gloom and doom, but it gets better, as if we continue to trust God and believe in God, and as we continue to focus on, again, the good times and what's really important. We don't have to fill a void. We can definitely feel fulfilled. And some of the questions that I want you guys to think about is, well, some of the questions that I want you guys to maybe even talk over are, whose approval have you been working to obtain? And why do you think you need that person's approval? Because people who care about what people think always seek external validation from people on the outside. So whose approval have you been working to obtain, and why do you think you need that person's approval? Those are the first two questions I want to ask you guys. The next question is, why is there more freedom in God's approval than another person's approval? I want you guys to really dig deep and think about that. And the last question is, when you feel attacked or criticized, how might God be working in you and through you? So again, when we feel attacked or when we feel criticized, how are we leaning on God in order to be better? How are we leaning on the Lord in order to fix whatever problem that we may be having within ourselves. So those are the questions I want you guys to think about. Those are the questions I want you guys to consider as we speak about friendships and as we speak about what it looks like in order to be happy and satisfied with where we are, who we are, and who we have these friendships with. Some sources say that quality counts more than quantity in terms of whether or not a healthy number of friends is sufficient. And while it may be good to cultivate a diverse network of friends and acquaintances, you may feel a greater sense of belonging and well being by nurturing close, meaningful relationships that will support you through thick and thin. So, again, when we think about the quality of the relationships that we have instead of the quantity of friends, we can definitely see the significance of that in our lives. Please forgive me, everybody. I lost my place. Okay, so let's see. Okay, here we go. So when we think about ways to meet new friends, or when we are trying to build new relationships with people, it's possible to develop friendships with people who are already in your social network. So, and when we think about where to begin, we have to think about our social network. People who have like minds, people who have similar hobbies and interests. And we have to also, according to sources, think through people we've interacted with, even very casually, who've made a positive impression. Reconnecting with old friends, introducing ourselves to, for instance, our neighbors, and making time to connect with family members, and reaching out to people who we've enjoyed chatting with at social gatherings, and even staying in touch with people whom we've worked with or taken classes with in school. See, these are some of the ways to meet new people and make new friends. And if anyone, sources say that if anyone stands out in your memory as someone you'd like to know better, reach out and ask mutual friends or acquaintances to share the person's contact information, or even better, to reintroduce the two of you with a text or email or an in-person visit, and extend an invitation to coffee or lunch. And to meet new people who might become your friends, you have to go to places where others are gathered, and it's important not to limit yourself to one strategy for meeting people. And the broader your efforts, the greater your likelihood of success. But when we think about how important it is to maintain all of that, we have to remember that the more grateful we are, the happier we'll be. And it takes effort on our part to choose to have an attitude of gratitude for people in our lives. And the longer our relationships last, the harder it may be to remember. But we can experience an eternal impact on our relationships when we develop the habit of giving thanks to God when we think of our spouses, our children, our parents, our siblings, neighbors, coworkers, and even our small group members within the church community that we may have been paired or grouped with. And the longer we know someone, again, the more likely we are to take that person for granted, because we have a tendency to believe that they are always going to be there and that nothing's going to happen. But with the passage of time, it becomes easier to focus on that person's faults and on the bad times instead of the happy times. So again, thinking about people's problems and pointing them out to them is easier to do. But again, we have to focus on the good times. Just like the first devotional said, we have to focus on what their strengths are. We have to focus on what makes them special. So let's see. So we've covered most of these devotionals, but I think that I'm going to speak about one more. We have about 10 minutes left for the show, but I want to speak a little bit more about this subject. I want to wrap it up for the next 5 minutes. I hope you guys have enjoyed this discussion. And again, if you did, like, comment, share, subscribe right down below and through all of the social media outlets that AGR and the Beauty in Us Radio have. So make the choice to rejoice. This is the devotional that I read this morning. And according to Philippians chapter 1, verses 18 and 19, it states that I will continue to rejoice, for I know that as you pray for me and the Spirit of Jesus Christ helps me, this will lead to my deliverance. And when things are falling apart, it's important for us to remember not to try to work it out ourselves. And it's also important for us to let God put the pieces back together. And we can cope with a problem that we may have within our friendships or other relationships, or even in situations with two different options. One is to worship, and the other is to worry, according to what Pastor Rick Warren said in his devotional. Um, and we can also remember that Paul reveals several sources of strength for staying positive and happy during tough times. But first, we have to keep God's perspective about our problems, and we have to again remember that it's God's bigger perspective that helps us see past our problems. And even in the text, it states that Paul knows that God is working in the midst of the struggle, and it's about what you know that keeps you going. So again, it's about our faith. Secondly, Paul has praying. He has people praying for him, and that keeps him going. And knowing that you have the support of other believers is like having wind to fill your sails, according to this text. And I think that's important for us to remember too. We all are going to need people throughout the course of our lives. We are all going to need people to count on when we're in trouble or when we're going through tough times. We all need a small circle of friends. We all need a small group of people who love and care about us and who are willing to support us in every way they can. So it's important for us to remember that, when people are praying for you, well, I'll say us, when people are praying for us, that's the signal that they care and that they love us, and that they are praying that God has a hedge of protection over us so that we can feel safe and secure, and we can feel protected from all hurt, harm, and danger. So prayer is how we release, the will of God into the earth, and prayer is also where we have our most intimate moments with Christ. So, and again, knowing that we have a support of other believers keeps us going, and it keeps us from giving up. And Paul has, according to the text, Paul has faith that God will work his problems. He will work out his problems for the good, and he is confident that God is going to do his good work no matter what is decided. But he also wants to see the growth in faith, and he wants it shown to him that the belief that he can do it is there. And he has God's perspective, the prayer of friends, the Holy Spirit, and the faith. And he chose in the text to continue to rejoice, and he made the choice to rejoice. So that's a play on words, but that's the reality of this text. So as we wrap up the conversation about friendships, I want to again ask you all about what your perspectives are in terms of what it means to be a friend and what it means to have friends, because friendships to you may not be friendships to me. So we all have different meanings of the word friend. We all have a different meaning of what it means to be in a healthy relationship, or what it looks like to have a healthy circle of friends. So it's up to us to figure that out. We all have a choice. We all are in a position to pick our friends wisely. We are all in a position to pick the people in our space and within our circle. But again, who supports you, who reaches out to you, who's there for you through thick and thin, and who is there with you when the times get tough. But of course, it's always nice to be there for someone when they're doing well. But what if someone's not doing well? What if someone is going through a tough time? What if someone is experiencing hardship? Who's there for them? Who's someone that you can call when you need something? Who is that person or those group of people that you can call if you're in a bind or if you're in trouble? Who is that person or those group of people that you can really, really trust to have your back when you need them. So these are some of the things that I want everyone to think about and to ask themselves about, because again, some of us really need to chuck up the deuces and say goodbye to some people because um, they're of no use to us. They're not adding value to our lives. They're not supporting us. They're not encouraging us. They're not uplifting us in our times of need. They're not give, giving them the love, the unconditional love that we need in order to move forward. They're not giving us 100% in terms of being the best friend possible. There are some people in our circles that we need to get rid of, and we need to hang out with more people who are positive and more uplifting, people who are much more supportive and understanding. So again, we all need to think about our relationships. We all need to think about our friendships. Everyone who speaks to us may not be considered a friend. Everyone who we work with or attend school with, or even with the people that we know who may be labeled as acquaintances, you know, everybody's not a friend. I'm nice to everyone, but I don't spend my time with everyone, and that's the difference. But I want all of you guys to remember that. So, within the last 4 minutes that we have for the show, I wanted to make a few announcements before I say goodbye to you guys. So, again, next week on Tuesday, June 14th, from 6 to 7 p.m., we are going to have school board candidates from Baltimore City, Miss Salima Jasani and Miss Ashley Esposito, here with us to talk about their campaigns and to talk about their stories as educators and as community organizers. So we'll have a chance to speak to them about their campaigns and why they decided to run for 2 new historical seats for the Baltimore City School Board. 2 new historical seats for this campaign have been created. The first time in history for the Baltimore City School Board. So we'll talk about that with Miss Salima Jasani and Miss Ashley Esposito next week from 6 to 7 p.m. So please make an appointment to meet me back here on Tuesday, June 14th, 2022, from 6 to 7 p.m. And again, for the following week, we're going to have our post Father's Day special with some of the gentlemen from YMS and with Mr. Dave Briglio. He was a guest last summer. Please feel free to revisit that show at your earliest convenience or whenever it's feasible for you. And on June 28th, from 6:30 to 7 p.m., we are going to have Maryland State Delegate Ms. Regina Boyce on the show to talk about her work in the Maryland General Assembly representing her district in the city of Baltimore. So we have a packed show for the month of June. Very great shows, very great people. So I hope you guys enjoyed the message for this evening. I hope you guys really felt uplifted and encouraged and inspired by what I had to share. I read and I write a lot. So again, that's not all of what I have for you guys, but again, this show is only an hour. So I will be speaking about relationships, bonds, friendships, forgiveness, trust, and all of those subjects in future shows. But again, I appreciate you all for tuning in to another show. Well, to this show, not another show, this show. I appreciate you guys for tuning into this show. You guys could have been doing something else, but I appreciate every single one of you who tune into the show each and every week from 6 to 7 p.m. on a Tuesday evening. So again, I don't take it for granted. So I love and appreciate all of you. I've been pretty busy. I've been squaring things away. I've been making a lot of moves. A lot of transitions are happening at this moment, and I'm still in the thick of things, trying to get everything together. So again, I love you all and I appreciate you all, and I will definitely see you all next week. Make sure that you subscribe to Awesome God Radio on all of our social media platforms: Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, LinkedIn, you name it, we're on it. And make sure that you follow me at Nelson E. Brown on Instagram and Twitter at Nelson E. Brown, and on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch, and other platforms at Nelson Brown. So again, this is the Beauty in Us Radio right here on Awesome God Radio. I'm your host, Nelson E. Brown, and I will see you all next week. I hope you all can continue to stay safe. I hope you guys are enjoying this warm weather, and I hope you guys have a great summer.